Hi, I'm David and welcome to LeisureBit, and today we're going to be upgrading our van lights to these ones, which are dimmable, have a night light and have a very handy USB port. So let's get cracking. So these are the lights we're going to be fitting, and the reason for fitting them is they have a very handy USB port on the side and they're pretty straightforward to fit. You can also dim the lights. You just use the little button on there and it's got a little blue night light. So let's just have a look at this one I've installed already. So the USB on this side is just behind here, just enough room to get in there. I just mounted them back a bit so that nobody knocks the head on them. And to turn the night light on or turn the light on, you just press the button. As you can see me, I can do it from here, cycling through there. See the blue light there, light on, and if we press and hold it, what happens there is it will dim down the light or brighten the light. So you can see there it's dimming down, and if we press it again and hold it, it'll brighten up the light. And again, just tap it to turn off. And if you've watched the previous video, you'll see that they don't use an awful lot of electrical current, hardly anything, so it's quite useful there. It's not going to drain your batteries down. But the primary reason for doing it is A, to be able to dim the lights, because the ones that are installed as standard just have a switch on. Perfectly good enough for a lot of people, but I wanted something where I could actually dim the lights, have the little night light function with that little blue glow. It just gives a little bit of light if you need to get up and go up the loo or whatever, and the dimming facility, but mainly for the USB ports. And what's quite handy is you can just run the USB port, and in the CV here you can just pop your phone in the little tray above the door. So let's have a look at how we fit them. So first of all, it's one of those jobs that if you don't feel competent with electrical work, it's better to get somebody to do it. It's a fairly straightforward job to complete, and you do need the set of tools that we'll take a look at here. So let's take a look at the tools that we're going to use. So first of all, a screwdriver. Got a smaller screwdriver as well. I've got some of these screws because the ones that came with it are slightly too long. They're 12mm long. These are the ones that came with it, but they're slightly, just slightly protrude through the wood if you use those ones. We've got a couple of spade connectors red, a couple of spade connectors blue, but you could use black, red, whatever you need to use. A little bit of a heat shrink, so we're going to heat shrink it when we've crimped the spade on. Wire cutters and crimpers, some insulation tape, a heat shrink gun, and we've got the lights. Right, so the first job I'm going to do is, we've got the light here, and as you can see the ends of the wire need some connectors on. When we take the cover off I'll show you, but we'll pre-prepare this light ready, and it's exactly the same for any of the lights you want to change. Some people might not want to change any. Some people might want to change a couple of them at the back. Others might want to do the whole lot. I've decided to do the whole lot, and I'll pop a link in the description below on where you can get hold of these lights. There's lots of different varieties as well. You don't have to get ones exactly the same, but I thought these fit in quite well with the CV, with the nice chrome and the light. They're slightly bigger than the original ones that are put in. Just give you a quick look there and just to compare them. So let's get cracking. Let's pop the connectors on here. So what I'm going to use for this is these wire cutters. I'm actually going to use the crimper. In all honesty, these aren't the best at crimping. You can get much better crimping tools for crimping the connectors on. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to put one of these red crimp clips on the red and a blue crimp clip on the black. But I'm also going to put a little bit of this heat shrink on, just to make sure we've got a nice tidy connection, and I want to make sure that none of the connections can touch when we connect them back in. And we'll finish off when we're done with just a little bit of insulating tape as well, just to make sure the two don't touch. Because as the van bangs around when you go through potholes and things like that, what you don't want is a short circuit in one of your lights. And always make sure the connections are nice and tight as well. Very important with electricity that you make sure everything's nice and well connected up correctly and connected up the right way, making sure you get the positive to the positive terminal, the negative to the negative terminal. Because worst case you'll end up damaging the light, but ultimately you've got to be very careful, because you can end up with electrical issues that can cause fires. So just a quick, be very careful there. If you're not competent with electrics, get somebody else to do it. So let's pop these terminals on first of all. So what I'm going to do is just pop the connection in just so that it gets just very slightly protruding, and I'm just going to use the crimpers to crimp it up. Just making sure that that connection's in the right place before we crimp it up. And just make sure it's well crimped again, just so that we don't have any loose connections there. Just going to make sure it's nice and tight, which it is. And then just to remind me, I'm just going to pop this bit of heat shrink over there, and what we're going to do is we're just going to shrink the heat shrink round there, but I'll do both together when we get the positive one on. The reason for the spade terminals is the receptacle that it goes into is a female connector on that, and then this connects into it. You can pick these terminals up all over the place at the auto stores, Amazon, eBay, wherever, but these ones are quite good. And then if we ever want to put the original lights back, it's no problem, we can just plug in rather than putting chop blocks or chopping cables up. There we go, both on nice and tight, and I'll just put the heat shrink around that ready to go. When we do the heat shrink, we want to make sure we don't actually heat shrink the main bit of the connection, so just make sure the blade of it's clear there. So as you can probably hear, I've now switched on the heat gun. I can feel some heat coming out of there now. You can pick these up, this one's just a mains operated one. You can also use a regular heat gun paint stripper type, but this is intended for the job. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hold this, being careful not to burn my fingers, and then just warm up that heat shrink, rotating it round, and again just making sure we're going to land this in the right place when it shrinks down. Probably see it there, just starting to shrink down, and just rotate it around a little bit just so that it properly shrinks onto the connection there. This one, because it's slightly large, you can use some smaller one and put it on up front. Doesn't quite fully shrink up, but it makes sure that we're not going to have any problems with that connection. So that's that one done. Now we'll do the red one. Let's see it starting to shrink down there now. Perfect position as well, because then we're not going to block us getting the connection in if we put it up too far. Same as before, just work around and make sure it's properly shrunk onto the connection. It's just going nicely there now. And then we'll switch the heat gun off. I just put that on low for two reasons. One, the noise, but secondly, didn't want to upset the works at all when we're doing it. So there we go, two connections, heat shrunk on, and it just protects us there from anything touching anything, which is important. So now that's ready, we've got both of those crimped and made sure they're on nice and tight, and waited for the ends to cool down before we check they were on nice and tight as well. Any problem if they're loose, take it off, pop another connector on and start again. Now, making sure you've switched the power off before we start working on this light, we're going to remove the old light. So what I'm going to do is just check everything's working. Yeah, that's working. This is the original light fitted. I say lovely light, but it doesn't have the USB port on or the dimming. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut the power off to make sure that we don't have any inadvertent accidents while we're doing it, and I'm going to remove the light. Back in a tick. So now we're going to remove this screw and this screw with a screwdriver. There's actually a screw hole round the back here, but there isn't actually a screw in it. So this one and this one. And just pop those screws somewhere safe. And then we'll remove this cover, and you can see there the connections for the lights. What's important to note is that the green wire and black is the positive and the white wire is the negative when we connect it back up. So just going to pull those spade connectors out now. There we go. There's those disconnected. They're quite tightly fitted, so you might have to wiggle them around a little bit to get them out, but that's them disconnected. So what we're going to do now is we're going to remove the screws on the original fit light with the screwdriver. Again, it's a posi drive fitting. There's one. And as we bring the second one out, we just want to catch the light as it comes out, because it frees it up because it's screwed directly in. Then gently just wiggle the wires through, and there's the original light and connection. There we go. And I'm going to pop that on the side for safekeeping, and then pop that away in case I ever want to refit it. So what we're going to do now on this is there's a little screw at the front that I'm going to use this little screwdriver. Just going to take that out because it allows us to get access to the mounting plate. So just grab that and then just put it somewhere safe. And there's the mounting plate that's just come off from the light there, and you can see the base of it there. Note that the hole for the screws at the front, so we need to make sure we mount that at the front. And I'm going to fit that just up there, like so. And just make sure it's straight and level, of course, when we do it. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to use these little 12mm screws just so that they don't come through and poke into the cupboard. So what I'm going to do now is just fit the first screw, and then we'll line it up properly after that. And again, just make sure you've got the where you screw it in at the front, because that's the front of the light. Always a little bit fiddly, this bit. So there's the first screw in, and I've just levelled up the bracket there. Now you could drill a pilot hole, but I find these little screws are fine. It's when you're using bigger screws it's worth drilling a pilot hole. Just make sure that's nice and straight. And we'll pop the next screw in. 2 screws in. Just double check it's still straight. Yep. Third screw in. And the final screw. There we go. Straight and solid. So now we're going to fit the light. So what we need to do is just push the connections through the hole. Sometimes easier to do them one at a time. It's not a massive hole there. And then just make sure nothing's getting trapped. I'm going to put the light on there, and this is slightly fiddly just putting the screw in now. If you can, it's easier to get the first turn in by hand. Then as you screw it in, just make sure you hold the light up tight so it catches on the back as it goes up. Hear it click in there. Make sure it's in nice and tight and solid. All good there. and then I'm going to connect the wiring up at the top. And if we remember in this case, but your van could be different, we need to connect the white wire to the negative, or the black or the blue as we put on, and we need to connect the black and green wire to the positive. So let's connect that up now. So there we go, there's the new connections. What we're going to do now is just put a little bit of insulating tape around the connections just to make sure nothing touches. There we go, that's done, and it just makes sure those connections stay nice and solid, and it just covers up any potentially exposed connections there. We're then just going to fold the connections up so they're nice and tidy, and then we're just going to pop the top back on and just put the 2 screws we took out earlier in there. There we go, that's fitted down nice and tightly again, back like it was originally. And worth noting, just make sure you don't trap any of the wires in when you screw it down. So let's pop the power on and let's give it a go. So there we go, there's the light, and let's grab a USB cable and let's try and make sure it charges the phone. So what we'll do now, we'll just plug the USB connection in like so, and then we'll just plug it into the bottom of the phone like so, and there we go, charging. And we can turn the lights off and things, but it'll still keep charging up, as you can see there. So there we go, that's fitting one of the USB dimmable lights with the nightlight feature and the light into our Elddis CV20. I'm going to finish the other one off, and then that's them all done. I hope you found that useful, and again, if you're going to do any electrical work, just be very careful and make sure you do a good job of it. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful. You take care. Catch you next time.